how many calories do you consume a day? So I got this question earlier in the live stream as well. I don't give out my calories or macros because they aren't beneficial for anyone else. And I get this question a lot, especially from like younger girls, because they think that if they know how many calories I'm eating, they can just replicate that and they'll achieve the same results. And even if you don't think that's the case, that's what a lot of people think, especially like people who are in here may think that as well. And it just isn't helpful. Even if you do know my numbers and you're not planning to go off of them, you might compare your numbers to mine or something. And it really just doesn't help. Even if you're the same age, height, weight, activity level, sex, everything, it's still not going to be helpful because we'll still have individual differences. So that's, and plus like, your training would be different. There's so many factors at play. So the only thing that matters is that you're consistent with your tracking, and then all you'd have to do, it's trial and error no matter what anyway. So you just have to start tracking and then adjust based on that. So on a reverse, would you say if weight's still down or same, I should still increase calories for that week? Yeah, if it's down, I would definitely increase calories. Or even if it's still the same, especially if you're trying to put on like a little bit of weight to be able to gain. Yeah. Give me a kiss. I'm married. Paloma, Luca, best advice to someone starting a weightlifting routine. Well, one, have a routine, have an actual structured program that you follow. And the number one thing is do not let your ego get in the way. So do not ego lift because you will hurt yourself. Master the execution, the form before you do anything else. A lot of people overlook form and execution, and that's why they spend years spinning their wheels in the gym because they're never isolating the muscles that they intend to. Or they end up with very dominant body parts over others because they were never fully engaging those other muscle groups or training them properly. So make sure that you get your form down. But number one thing would be following a structured training program. Make sure you have a training program and make sure that it actually is something that you can manage. So don't go out and find a 6-day training program if your schedule allows for 3 days of training per week. Meal diesel, so it becomes glycogen until your body decides the surplus is enough to build fat. And how does alcohol affect that? So alcohol has effects on like training performance for sure, detrimentally, but it can be consumed in moderation while being in a deficit. But of course, it's not going to be, you don't want to be drinking a lot while doing that. But yes, when you have excess food, it's stored as glycogen, and then going into the whole science of it is probably going to be really boring for most of you guys. But yeah, over time the surplus will become fat. Chands is like a nickname, but it's Chandni. It means moonlight in Hindi. Wow, I love that. Thank you for telling me that. I really like knowing the meanings behind names. That's really pretty. I have a moon necklace. E.A. Franco, hello. Sanjeet, hello. Fahad, what's up? Emma Preet, hello. Can you get the same amino acids to build muscle from a vegetarian diet versus a meat-eating diet? No. I know that some non-meat foods don't have as much leucine as you get from meats, but what are your thoughts about this? Yeah, you will not get all of the essential amino acids without having a complete protein, which would be an animal protein. So the only time that I recommend people taking BCAAs, which are not helpful for anyone else, if you're eating enough protein and if you're an omnivore, if you eat meat, then you don't need to supplement BCAAs. It will literally do nothing for you. But if you're a vegetarian or vegan, then that would be the only time that you need to supplement BCAAs. So, yep. Good question, though. So, yeah, let me know what other questions you guys have. I need to tweeze my brows. You're welcome. Zubek, hello. So, what's up? What other questions do you guys have? can you talk a little bit about your coaching program, please? So with one-on-one coaching, what I do is I handle inquiries via phone call, so I can talk to somebody individually and see if I'm actually able to help them or not, and discuss moving forward, because if it's not a good fit, then it doesn't make sense to talk further on it. So it's nice to be able to have that phone call to really judge if we're both comfortable communicating with each other and then moving forward. But in terms of coaching, I work one-on-one with people virtually. So that means that I do check-ins with them via phone call. Some people do emails, a lot of coaches do emails. And I do have clients who strictly do emails because that's what they prefer. But for the most part, my clients check in via phone call. That's on a weekly basis. And then I speak with them throughout the week as well to hold them accountable on a daily and a weekly basis. And I write a custom training program for them. And I also handle managing the calorie adjustments, cardio adjustments, things like that. So the biggest factor is accountability more than anything else. Lots of good info tonight. I appreciate that, Gothic Vampire, and thank you for being in here a lot. Yay, Mishakar from IP hangover last night. I only had that one. I didn't feel it much at all, actually. And then, I definitely don't feel anything the next day, that's for sure. One beer is definitely not enough for me to feel anything. Are you accepting clients now? If so, do you coach pregnant women? So I do not coach pregnant women just because I know that there are a lot of factors that are going to come at play individually. Each pregnancy is different, and I think it's important that you're going through the guidance of your doctor and everything. I have had a couple clients who became pregnant while I was working with them, and we were under the understanding that, of course, everything was going to be following doctor's orders. So if at any time they were forced to go on bed rest because it was high risk or anything like that, then we would enter a program that was an understanding there. But I do not coach people. I do not coach pregnant women because I think it's important that you do what's right for you. And honestly, I think for a lot of people going through coaching while in that unpredictable, stressful time may not be ideal. Learning the habits before, I think, while you're pregnant, before you deliver your child, I think is very helpful to be active during, because that allows you to have a smoother, labor and delivery and everything. But that's just my take on it. I know there are some people who do coach pregnant women. Just for me personally, that's just something that I have chosen not to do. One being, when I was pregnant, I was high risk and I was not allowed to train the entire time, even though I'm a healthy individual. So you just never know when that kind of thing is going to happen too. But it is good to be active otherwise, as long as it's okay with your doctor. Is it N.A. Chavez Fitness? What supplements do you take? So I've had a lot of questions about supplements in this live stream and last. Supplements are not important and they are not necessary. They're a very, very, very small part of your success in fitness in terms of making progress. So don't worry about that unless you have everything else in check, which is the foundation of your progress, which would be your water intake, your nutrition, being consistent with everything, but your training, your sleep, your water intake, stress management. If those are not all in check, then don't even worry about supplements. And if they are all in check, then you can start to worry about supplements. But even then, they're going to have such a minimal effect on your progress. And there's very few supplements that even do what they claim. If you do have, if you are wondering what supplements are actually worth it, then examine.com would be your resource. They compile all of the research for each supplement so you can look and see which ones are actually do what they say. But if anything, creatine monohydrate, most highly researched supplement out there, will help improve your training performance and everything. So if you are already consistent with everything else, creatine is definitely helpful. The other thing would be if you have trouble hitting your protein intake, protein powder is a very convenient thing to have to be able to help hit your protein goals. John Solo, I'm imagining them then giving birth to ripped babies. Ripped babies, that's funny. Bryce Crawford Fitness. Hi, hello, hello. Izzy actually does have abs. It's crazy. But that's because we do yoga together like 3-4 times a week in the mornings. And then she does ballet. She's a very active kid. Patty Mercado, thumbs up. Fit and funny guy, skip my question. I'm seeing no question from you up here. And in the time that you wrote skip my question, you could just retype that question. But yeah, I don't see any question from you in here. I just scrolled quite far a ways up. I just see your request to join the live stream, but I don't see any questions. Real Dizzle, what's your ratio of male-female clients, if you don't mind me asking? I don't mind at all. So let's see, how many male clients do I have right now? So that's probably about 1/3 of my clients are male. Yeah. Roughly. Maybe a little under 1/3 of my clients are male. When and how much should people stretch? So stretching apparently is a little bit, it used to be like really revered as like very, very important, and it seems to be less and less important the more research is done. But I still think like maintaining mobility is mobility is more important than flexibility. I mean, they go kind of hand in hand, but just being able to say like do the splits isn't really as helpful as being able to hold a split while you're in a handstand, for example, because you're actually able to move through that range of flexibility as opposed to just being flexible. So, mobility requires strength. So mobility will help with your lifting and vice versa. So if you do yoga, like everybody could benefit from doing yoga, and it really does work so well with lifting. Yeah, stretching was everything before, but now it seems like it's not such a big deal. Yeah, and it's actually like they've shown that like especially definitely don't be doing any static stretching before you lift. It will actually decrease your performance. So static stretching is when you're just holding a stretch. Obviously, if static holds, and then dynamic would be like when you're moving through it, doing like a mobility warm up. So that would be what you would want to do. Just getting warm before lifting is going to be the priority, and stretching is going to be something you would do after. But even so, it's still not necessarily that big of a deal, it seems like so far. But of course, if it makes you feel good, anecdotal things are a thing for sure too. Placebo effect's a thing as well. Not saying it is a placebo effect, but like if it makes you feel good, there's no reason not to do it. So, Fahad, hello. Sarhad, hello. So yeah, what other questions do you guys have? Rashab, hello. Valerie, do you have a yoga plan you follow? So I used to do yoga like all the time. And like when I did, so like I pretty much just kind of have like my own, like I'll just make up like a flow as I do it, like with Isabel. She's primarily working on getting her splits right now because she's in ballet. So for her, the flexibility and the mobility is very important, especially. And her primary goal is getting the splits. And I'm like, I don't quite have my splits anymore like I used to. But then I hadn't done yoga for years. And I hadn't been, a cheerleader or a dancer in years. So I've been doing yoga with her, and so primarily focused on like hips and hamstrings is like how I do it. But I do like sun salutations as well. But if you're looking for like a YouTube channel that is like the best for yoga, would be there's a couple. There's Yoga with Adriene is a really good one, especially for beginner people who are just getting into yoga. And even if you're not, she has advanced ones as well. And she has 15-minute ones, 45-minute ones, and there's targeted ones for having lower back pain, etc. All those. So love her channel. And then the other one is Flow with Addie, but she spells Addie differently. I want to say it's Addee. Could be wrong about that. Maybe it's Addee. I don't know. I think it's Addee, but she's especially if you're aiming to get splits like me and Izzy, loved her stuff. And then so if you don't already follow her on Instagram, Shona Virtue, love her. She has a lot of yoga and just mobility stuff on her YouTube channel, and I love that. And she also does IGTV videos about this kind of stuff, so I definitely recommend that as well. C. Rivera 98, calisthenics versus weightlifting. So the way you spelled weightlifting, I'm assuming you're referring to Olympic weightlifting. They're two very, very different things. I think it's really cool to watch people do calisthenics, but it can also be supplemented with lifting, because they would help each other. If you're stronger, if you have better mind-muscle connection, you'll be pretty good at it'll help you with your calisthenics and vice versa, just like yoga and lifting go hand in hand. But if you're talking about as a sport, calisthenics versus Olympic weightlifting, I also think Olympic weightlifting is super dope. So being able to do a clean and jerk, and those are really impressive, and it requires quite a bit of strength. I think it's awesome to watch as well. Polo Maluka, what training, educational background do you have? Thanks for being live and answering questions. Appreciate that. So educational background. So for the most part, right now I'm in MNU, which is a certification course for nutrition through Martin McDonald. So if you don't already follow him, highly, highly, highly recommend his page. It's Martin Nutrition, just all one word, Martin Nutrition on Instagram. So it's his course. It's the #1 nutrition course. I absolutely adore him, and I love the course. It's incredible. It's a very intensive 1-year course for becoming a certified nutritionist insured through MNU. And then otherwise, I'm also subscribed to the top research reviews for nutrition and exercise science. So I mentioned these on my last live stream, I believe. So one of them would be MASS, which is through Eric Helms and Greg Nuckols, Brad Schoenfeld, and a few other people. So that would be for exercise science. And then Lane Norton has his own version of MASS. And then Alan Aragon's research review, which would be for nutrition. So it's AARR. I know there's more too. I can't think of all of them right now. Valerie, thank you. You're welcome. No equipment. Oh, okay. Well, what's your question though? You just kind of said this versus this. What's the specific question? Bryce Crawford, do you have any advice on how to build calves? Asking for a friend. A lot of people just aren't training them frequently enough, or not really frequently enough. It's just they're not training them with enough volume. Because, let's face it, if we have a weak body part, a lot of times we're ugh. Especially with calves, it's not exactly exciting to train. So we're I'm going to train them, 2 times a week. It ends up being 1 time a week, and then it ends up being no times a week. So make sure you're actually progressively overloading with your calf training as well. Fernando, do you do any sport? I did. I'm not an athlete now. I'm old. Yeah. So I did dance when I was little. Then I did cross country, track, which I did long jump and mid distance running, and then I was a cheerleader. We had competition cheerleading. So that's what I did. Where are you from? I was originally born and raised in Japan, and I'm currently in Ohio. So it's 11:10, which I think that means that this is probably going to end on me in maybe 5 minutes or something like that. I don't know. Could be something like that. If someone is overweight and eating well below maintenance, how would you build their macros and training program? I would need a lot more context than that. Like me writing somebody's macros and training requires a lot of information. I can't give a blanket statement. Like, that's why I do an onboarding call with each of my clients before starting. Like, we do an inquiry call, and then we do an onboarding call, because I need to have pretty much as much background, as much information, as much detail as possible for me to make sure that whatever I am writing for you is going to be sustainable, makes sense based off where you're at. We have to discuss your short-term goals, long-term goals. How long have you been at a certain number of calories? How have things been responding? How well have you been adhering to those calories? What are your energy levels like? What's your training like right now? What's your activity level like right now? How's your job? Are you sedentary? I'm running out of breath because that's not even the end of it. So yeah. John, I've given up on my calves. I'm just gonna get cool tattoos in that area to make up for the disturbing lack of muscle. Like, calves, who's that? No, never heard of them. Except I have huge calves. So I would be, I'd be happy to give you some of mine if you have shoulders that you want to give to me, but bodies don't work that way. Libby Matthews, how do you reduce muscle mass in legs? So first I want to clarify. I've had a lot of women that come to me and they say they want their legs to be less bulky. And really what they mean is that they just want to lose fat. And it's not that they have so much muscle that they want to lose muscle in their legs. Unless you're really lean and you don't like how much muscle you have. If you're not super lean, it's not about losing the muscle. It's about losing overall fat. And unfortunately, we can't spot reduce or we lose fat, but everyone holds fat differently genetically. I always held fat in my legs. That was where I held all of it. Like, all of my fat went to my legs when I first started. I've always been lower body dominant, always had larger legs, and I do have muscular legs, but if you see me now, they're quite proportionate to the rest of my body, and that's not because I tried to lose muscle mass. It's because I got leaner, and I actually continued to train my leg muscles, and they got more and more and more defined, and now they are the leanest part of my body. So, just want to clarify that that's your goal. Is it Rojave? Hello? Fear the Deer. Hey, Michelle, do you coach both men and women or only women? How much do you charge? Mark. I coach both men and women, not just women, so about a third of my clientele is men. And in terms of pricing, that's going to depend on length of time, etc. And if you are interested in actually discussing coaching, what I do is I set up an inquiry call where we would be able to speak one-on-one and make sure everything is a good fit, discuss the details of the program, your goals, etc., to make sure that we would actually be a good fit, like communicating well together, moving forward. And that's something we would address at that time. So if that's something you're interested in and having like an inquiry call, then you can DM me after this live stream, or even if you hop off right now and DM me if that's like your one concern, then I'll get back to you and then we'll be able to set up a call that way. We can schedule a time. Gavi, hello, what's up? So I believe I only have a few more minutes left on this, but any last minute questions, let me know. I feel like it's getting kind of quiet now, so maybe I should go. We'll see. Any questions? I eat smaller portions and healthy food and workout, but don't see significant changes. Are you counting your calories, and are you consistent on the weekends as well? Is your sleep in check? Is your stress management in check? Are you drinking enough water? Are you following a structured training program? And how long have you been doing it? Because it takes a lot of time. Are you a bodybuilder? I think anybody can claim that they are a bodybuilder if they are aiming to shape their physique, because you are literally building your body. That is what it is, unless you're referring to the sport of bodybuilding, which is also a thing as well. I have competed twice in bodybuilding competitions. I do plan to do it again in the future, just not any near future plans right now. I mean, that could literally change tomorrow, who knows, but not right now. I don't have any plans to compete right now, probably not for a year or so, but who knows. Meal Dizzle, should I go get groceries or go to bed? JK, I'm getting groceries actually. Do you use TMS and foam roll, or do you see less benefits since you do yoga already? I really, like foam rolling has also been somewhat disproven lately through, there's been a lot of PT stuff that's been getting disproven through research, which is interesting. Like it's a lot of placebo, like soft tissue work, foam rolling, for example, and like massages. It's kind of crazy. It's pretty much placebo. But with that said, there may be a benefit because of the placebo effect, because there's been a lot of things to show that like mentally, when somebody thinks they're healthy, they actually usually get healthier. Or like when somebody mentally thinks they're sick, they actually get those symptoms, etc. So there is that like psychological benefit. If you're like, oh, this is really making me feel better when you foam roll, you likely will actually feel better just because of that effect. But physically, I think they proved that there was not really one. So, but yeah, I really love yoga. I enjoy it. So it does help me feel better just because I'm more active. And I think that's a big part of it too, is a lot of people, the only time that they're active is when they work out. So that's why they get so sore, because they're not moving. Because I'm sure you've seen like those studies about like humans aren't made to sit. And really the thing is that there's nothing wrong with the sitting. It's the problem is that we don't get up and move enough. Like you can sit. It's not like you have to have a standing desk. It's just that if you are going to sit, you need to be getting up and moving as well. Is it Seshwolf? What rest intervals would you recommend in between Kegel sets? For men who's a beginner. Can you even do Kegels as a man? Anyway, but in terms of like between lifting sets, usually about a minute. There's been so much lately. It's like those little details are going to matter much, much less than being consistent with a training program, and actually progressively overloading, which means you're increasing your training volume from week to week. So, that's going to be the priority. But if you are, in terms of worrying about like the rest between sets, a minute is fair. But it's not super important based on research. It has a very minimal effect. You may just have some, you definitely don't want to be resting too short though, because if you're too fatigued, then your next set is going to suffer. Brian, hello. Fear the Deer. I'm just starting in bodybuilding training, but I'm having trouble with the diet portion of bodybuilding, and I've just started doing meal prep and I suck at it. You don't have to meal prep, but that's the thing, is if you're doing, when you say the diet portion of bodybuilding, if you're talking about like a bro diet, I would not recommend that, because if it's like a meal plan, it's restrictive, and especially like on weekends, you may find yourself falling off track. You wouldn't know what to do in social events, etc. You don't need to be extreme in order to see results. It's about your overall calories, your overall protein, and being consistent. So you don't have to cut out food groups. That's not really what matters. Being consistent with your calories and your protein, like you don't need to be cutting out stuff. How many hours should you work out? So it's pretty much as long as you're pretty active on a day-to-day basis. So even if you have a sedentary job, you still want to be aiming to get in movement on a daily basis, even if that's a 30-minute walk. So if you walk every day for 30 minutes, you're doing good things for yourself. But in terms of like lifting, it's going to be based off of what your schedule allows for. If that's 3 days a week of an hour each time, that's fine. It's whatever you can be consistent with, because, whatever's optimal. I just wrote a caption about this actually. Whatever's optimal and I've wrote many about this specific thing. Whatever's optimal or best on paper has zero relevance to you if you can't stick to it. So you just need to worry about what you can stick to. Adherence is number one. Consistency is number one. Strengthens your PC muscles, yes. Bodybuilding is amazing. I used to work out for like 2 and 3 hours. Oh yeah, that's no good. Then plateaued and recently started again. The most I do is an hour, but I've been busy too. Yeah, an hour is fine as long as you're consistent with that, however many days per week that you can be consistent with it. Set out your schedule, do whatever you can to make it as easy for you as possible to stick to it. And that's going to be what matters, whether that means that you're setting out your gym clothes the night before, or you pack them in your car for after work, or you go before work, or whatever that's going to be that works in your schedule. That's going to be what matters. And you definitely don't want to be training for 2 or 3 hours because then you'll actually start burning through muscle. So rest is equally as important, if not more important. Breathe, you're okay, thanks. No problem. So yeah, any other questions you guys have? It's almost 11:30, so I think I'm going to get off here soon because I am really tired. I feel like I'm hogging all the questions. What's your advice for someone who wants to be a coach? So I would recommend first coaching people for free. So if you have friends, acquaintances who are willing to be like your guinea pig, given that you already have like an idea of what you're going to do, definitely first like structure, like how am I going to do my coaching? And then attempt that and work with them with the understanding that, you're aiming to get them results and they're your first client. That transparency there, you're building your portfolio essentially if they can write you testimonials as well after the fact. But by working with different people and you're doing it for free, you're understanding what you need to fix with your business. So you may learn like, oh, I didn't like doing my onboarding this way. I'm going to make this adjustment, which you do with another client that you're training for free. And then you understand like, oh, okay, so I like this better. You're basically learning what you're going to do when you decide to offer your service. I would definitely make sure that you have the right information first. So spend your time feeling confident in your information before starting to coach somebody. So whether that be that you're going to go through a certification, especially for nutrition, I think that a lot of the training side of things you can learn through quite a bit of, all of it. I would still recommend reading research. Spend your time reading lots of research to understand things. But I think a lot of like exercise science and training things can be learned through reading a lot. And going through a course or certification is helpful, but there are a lot of like, for example, an in-person like PT certification like NASM or ACE or any of those things are going to be a bit outdated, a lot of the information that they provide, especially in the nutrition section. So, and there's no requirement to constantly stay up to date on information as an in-person PT, which is kind of the unfortunate part that happens there. There are a lot of great in-person PTs as well, but I'm just saying that certification doesn't really cover all the grounds. So if you are going to do something, I would focus mostly on the nutrition side of things because that is the part that most people need help with more than anything. Because honestly, the exercise thing, it can be literally whatever that person can be consistent with that they enjoy. So even if you weren't writing them a training program, even if they were just literally like they swim every day of the week because they love swimming, if you are helping with them with their nutrition, then they will lose fat. So you need to have the understanding of the nutrition. The course that I would recommend, the certification, is the one I'm going through, which is MNU. It's a 1-year intensive course, and he literally does not grant the certification to people who put out misinformation. Like, he has denied people's graduating from the course based on that. So I think it's amazing that he has that integrity. He's not just handing out certifications. So, wow, it's going to end in 1 minute and 30 seconds. I lost 70 pounds since last spring, which wasn't even that hard since I was rather large, but now it's getting tougher and hot. And one might have to get smart about my workouts. Yeah, like the more, the less that you have to lose, the more stubborn, like the harder it is. But in terms of like splitting up your workouts, you need to just make sure that you're training all your muscle groups 2 to 3 times per week. How you split that up isn't that important. Do you have any rest days? Absolutely. Rest is extremely important. I only train 4 days a week, so I have 3 rest days. You need to have at least 1, if not 2, rest days per week. I didn't burn out muscle though. In fact, I built lean muscle back then, lost weight. Yeah, well, there's the newbie stage, which is that in the beginning when you're lifting, you gain muscle the most rapidly. It's newbie gains, like you gain the most muscle at that time. Valerie Hamish, I checked out those ladies for yoga programs. Oh, I was actually not even referring to their programs. I'm just referring to their YouTube channels, which is totally free content. But I don't know anything about their paid programs, so I really can't speak on those. I'm sorry. But I have 20 seconds left, so I'm going to hop off now. But thank you guys so much for being in here, and I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good night. Valerie, yeah. So just check them out on YouTube. All right, bye.